What's going on, everybody? My name is Jacob Snow, welcoming you to another Legends of Albadyn build review. I wanted to thank you guys for all of the views that you guys gave to my last build review. Really got me excited to be making more of these, even more excited than I already was. This build review episode is looking at the Rook, which was one of my first ideas building Legends of Albadyn, and it's still one of my favorite classes to this day. We're going to get right into it with the overview. The Rook's class type is DPS, or damage per second. I'm planning on making a video which defines these terms for people who aren't familiar with them, so we'll get into that later, though. The Rook's class stats are 4+ to attack and 4+ to defend, which is very balanced for a DPS class. Usually DPS classes have better attack for worse defense, but the Rook is very balanced, very well-rounded. But what really makes the Rook shine is their class ability. Move to any unoccupied space. Costs 2 movement actions, usable 4 times per battle. This gives Rooks optimal options on movement. You can just teleport, grief, teleport to escape. Rooks are the highest mobility character unassisted, which means, yeah, you can have this great of mobility with teleport scrolls, but that's going to knock you back 500 gold each time. Rooks can just do it 4 times per battle. The best position for Rook is Assassination of MVPs, which an MVP really changes depending on the situation, but Rooks are good at just popping in and knocking them out. Build 1 for Rooks really locks this in. Playstyle: use high speed and teleports to constantly be near enemy VIPs or to insta-gank low HP boss monsters. Enemy VIPs include, but are not limited to, monsters like Bandit Shielder, Ash Cult Mystic, Undying Totems. Those are all things that a Rook is perfectly suited to just poof in, knock it out, and then get back to safety and help deal with the rest of the stuff. Or, in the case of the Undying Totem, it just ends the encounter. I'm gonna level with you. Low HP boss monsters don't really make it out of testing, but monsters that are low HP boss monsters vis-a-vis would include the Bandit Fallen Knight, who has not made an appearance in quite some time. I'll level with you. But it's just low HP boss monsters don't usually make it out of testing because they die way too freaking quick because of builds like the Mobility Assassin. Optimal starting skills for Mobility Assassin: I would almost always encourage you to get max ranked fleet-footed before you get anything else. I mean, Aggressor is good because it increases your attack speed, which means you just, instead of having to rely on foot speed, you just teleport in, unload a buttload of attacks, and then jink right back out. But fleet-footed gives you additional mobility options for, let's say you burn a teleport going to the wrong monster, or you have to use a teleport to escape. You run out of teleports, but you're a human. You only have 4 movement. It's not optimal. Whereas with fleet-footed, maxed out, you would have 7 movement, which, while it is not as good as a teleport, it's still pretty damn close. Melee proficiency level 1, and like fleet-footed 1 or aggressor 1, it's good, but I would slot melee proficiency more toward early to mid-game on that, not starting skills, just because melee proficiency is expensive, and you don't want to be locking down too much of that too early because it's not going to be optimal, which is what we're after. Complexity of play on a Mobility Assassin is 2 out of 5. And the only reason it's a 2 and not a 1 is because you have to be able to properly identify the enemy VIP. For instance, if there is a Bandit Shielder and a Bandit Assassin on the field, which one do you go after? Those decisions are the ones that player who's relatively new to the game would it's a 50-50 you'll get it wrong. Whereas advanced players, and now everyone watching this video knows, always go after the assassin first. The assassin has a way higher chance of one-turning a player at the low power brackets. So always knock out the assassin first if you can. Next build we're going to look at is the sniper. This is probably my favorite build to run a Rook on, even though I've run 2 out of the 3 that we're talking about today. Sniper build is just so good. Playstyle is use teleport and minor movement shifts to line up for optimal laning. Teleporting, especially with the most recent rules update, which stipulates that when making ranged attacks, it no longer has to be a straight line of squares because the trajectory the projectile follows and the squares you use to get to your target are not necessarily the same thing, which makes using a ranged character a lot easier, as you no longer have to lock in a specific lane. But still, lining up that optimal laning, very good. Optimal starting skills for sniper build: range proficiency 1, any eliminator skill. Now, eliminator skills are skills like Giver of Eternal Rest, Truthbringer, Keeper of the Peace. Those give you boosts against specific types of enemies, like bandits, ash cult, undead, etc. And that's just really good because as a sniper, you need every edge you can get. One thing I forgot to put on this slide is that you will need to run a sniper to purchase a ranged weapon. Granted, 1 or 2 adventures, you're going to have enough to buy a level 1 ranged weapon. That's a normal ranged weapon. It's not going to be the greatest thing ever, but it's certainly going to be good enough for you to run a sniper build. Now, the interesting thing here is that based on the rules, the feint skill actually does work with ranged attacks. And that allows you to re-roll 1 failed attack dice per round, which for a ranged build, especially if you wind up with a ranged weapon that's like got powerful, feint is insanely good because let's say it's powerful 3, you're playing a human, which means you have 4 attacks, which means you can only make 1 attack, and you whiff it, you can go, psych, reroll. So feint is a really good skill, even though it does take all 15 of your starting power. It's still really good. Complexity of play on a sniper is 3 out of 5. And the reason for this is that target prioritization is way more, even than it is for the DPS, mobility assassin. But furthermore, while lining up the shot isn't as difficult anymore, it's still possible to teleport to the wrong space. This has happened to me before. I'll calculate it out. My math is perfect. I actually teleport there, and lo and behold, I'm actually off by a space because I missed a square. And that happens a lot. It really does. I've had players move to the wrong space and go, so I attack this one. I'm like, I'm sorry, you can't do that. Why not? You're actually out by 1. Well, that sucks. And especially if you used your teleport to get to that space, it's really bad, which is what makes the sniper a little more difficult to build, is because with the mobility assassin, you're teleporting right next to someone and going wham, zam, stab, stab, stab. Whereas with the sniper, you're teleporting into range of 1 or more monsters instead of just teleporting up in. And with the ranged rule, which means if you have a range greater than 3, you can't attack while using a ranged weapon if that monster is adjacent to you. Sniper build also requires you to really mind your positioning and the movement speed of the enemies around you. So the third build, I wanted to start doing something different. And with each third build, we're doing something different that's looking into a different aspect of the game. Instead of like what we did with the last one, where it was 3 perfectly viable, logical builds. The third build that we look at is always going to be more situational or just more fun. Which brings us to the Jank build. the tanky Rook. This is not optimal. Okay, the Rook has the highest potential of the DPS. However, they do have potential as a tank. Hello, Raid. Which is something else. Optimal starting skills, if you're wanting to build a tank Rook, include but are not limited to maxed out endurance for more HP, because you're going to need it. Melee proficiency level 1. Again, not optimal, but it could be worse. And toughness level 1, which is, again, same as melee proficiency. It's a little expensive for a starting skill, but damage reduction of 1 is still pretty damn good early on. The theory behind this is that as a tank, a Rook has the ability to, instead of having to move to where they're needed, which can take 2 or 3 rounds to do, the Rook can just go poof and be there. If supports are getting pressured by high mobility enemies like Shades or Bandit Assassins, and the Rook is on the front line, the Rook can legitimately just teleport and go from being a frontliner to a support cover like that. Which is really good. Really good. However, it still doesn't change the fact that the Rook, you can either be a tanky Rook, who you put your build into defense and survivability, and the items you buy increase your survivability, or you can really just teleport with the Rook and use him as an assassin. However, as complexity goes, it doesn't get easier to play. With other tank classes, they're a little more complex because you've got to know where to move and when. With the Rook, you can legitimately just pop out, deal with a problem in one location, and then pop right back to where you were, which takes all of the stress out of tanking. But you're going to want to buy some armor that changes your defense to 3+, because a tank defending on 50-50 without major survivability tools like the fighter block, you're not going to have a good time. Thank you so much for watching. That's all for this video. I've already got a couple others in process, like that terminology video that we were talking about back at slide 2, which was the overview, as well as several more build reviews coming right up. I'm looking forward to this. This is a stream of content that I've really enjoyed making. I cannot wait until next week when I get to release another one, and I might release the terms, like the definitions video, before next week. It just depends on if I have time to do so. If I don't have time to do so, I want to wish all of you a very happy Memorial Day. I want to hope you have a great weekend, and as always, thanks for watching, and until next we meet, may your journey continue.